Today on the Tom Kelly Show podcast, we pay tribute to a man who had a huge impact on my career and a huge impact on the television industry, Bill Geddie. Bill Geddie was the co-creator of The View with Barbara Walters. He was the executive producer of the show for the first 14, of which I worked with him for 7. He was a mentor to many. Adding to his professional credits real quick, he was the executive producer of Barbara Walters' specials for, I would say, the last 2/3 of her career at ABC. He was also the director of them. He was a lover of comedy. He loved rock and roll. He was a mix of old film buff Hollywood sensibilities, yet got daytime TV. He got TV. He got, he understood the zeitgeist. And I have done literally 20 times. I've hit that red button on the podcast machine, wanting to record this podcast. And I have hit stop 20 times. It feels weird to do a podcast about a friend who passed away. But on the other hand, Bill is the one guy who would tell you to do it, because he knew, hey, this is what people are talking about and you can talk about it. He was someone I wanted to impress. There were a few times where I would send him the podcast and felt good for him to say it was a good listen, or to give and honestly for him to give a note or two on what I could do better, because he just understood showbiz. Actually, the last conversation I had with him was a volley of messages about the podcast we did about Ryan Seacrest taking over for Pat Sajak on Wheel of Fortune, where he had a great line. He's like, Tom, Wheel of Fortune is a giant ATM machine. You don't want to mess with that. I'm doing the story out of order, and at this point, folks, just bear with me. Why is Bill important to me? The whole story of my career, I've told it 1,000,000 times on this podcast. I was doing stand-up. I was in a point in my life, not unlike the one I'm in right now, where I was wandering from job to job, doing my radio writing, and stand-up was kind of fizzling. And I was doing a web TV show about me quitting comedy to be a male mermaid in the famous Weeki Wachee Mermaid show down in Florida. And that's when I got the call saying Janette Barber had recommended to Rosie O'Donnell, that Rosie O'Donnell recommend to Bill Geddie and Barbara Walters that I be the new warm-up comedian at The View. As you know, if you've read any history books, the relationship between when Rosie came in with a hurricane of her ideas into an established show was a stressed relationship, and my job was going to last 2 weeks, and it lasted 14 years. Actually 16 years. If you count my Good Morning America years, and you count, that last year at Tamron Hall, and arguably it's still going, except I'm just not there that much. But that's a whole other story, people. That's a whole other story. Bill. Let's talk about Bill. A lot of people have written wonderful tributes to him. Words like pioneer and trailblazer and mentor have been used, and all are accurate. For me, the things that caught my mind were that he was a leader. He was first 6'5", huge man, deep voice, always a little bit more serious, and for all of his accomplishments, what always struck me about him as a color of his character was there were elevators at the old View studio. Actually, the elevators are still there, but there were elevators in 320 West 66th Street where people would have to go up and down these elevators to rush around to do whatever work they had to do because the offices were on 3 or 4 different floors. The studio was on one floor, control room on another, dressing rooms on another, and the offices were in the basement. And fun one about Bill was, despite the fact that he was big and important, he always let the women out of the elevator first. Even if you were a production assistant, ladies left the elevator first. And I told him that I told him that once. He's like, oh, no, that's just manners. But that always just struck me about who he was. He was Texan. I think he did some time growing up in Oklahoma as well, but there was a gentlemanly quality to him. He knew how to get the best out of me. He let Tom Kelly be Tom Kelly. It sounds crazy, but let's face it, folks. If you're listening to this podcast, if you've seen me perform, I'm quirky. I'm not necessarily a hit on my own, but I'm a brilliant opening act, man. And he let me be my quirky little self. He let me run a little freak show / talk show in between commercials while they were debating whether or not, whatever the debate of the day was. He let me, he helped me interact with Barber, who, was a legend and I was always nervous around. And he let me pitch ideas. And he put me on TV, which, honestly, that a morsel a week on TV and with somebody else doing a lot of the work and maybe somebody touching up my makeup. That was really, when you say, what were you reaching for? I would have loved to have been the weekly comic relief at The View. And there were times where I was close to that. And what was great about Bill was I described my relationship with him as being, I was Lucille Ball and he was Ricky Ricardo or, Desi Arnaz, but, the whole Desi Lucy thing of Lucille Ball was always coming up with a little scheme for being on TV. And those were my emails. I would write him crazy ideas for being on TV. I'd be like, some of the, like Bill, were a couple of funny ones. The ones that got on the air. Bill, I almost got into a fist fight defending a woman's honor at a bar. That was one. What were a couple of other, famous one. Bill, I can hear the sound of my neighbors having sex in my new apartment. He put that on TV. And and there were ideas much worse than that. And he read 90% of those emails and replied with notes. Good. We'll put this on standby. Or the constructive criticism of why this won't work. And sometimes he was blatantly straight enough to tell me, Tom, I have no idea what the hell you were saying in that email. And yet he would still read the next one. I have a killer demo reel that gets me working. And I would say, that work that, I owe that reel to him. There's so much I want to say, and I'm just, I'm not going to be able to say it on a podcast. I wanted to do an interview with a friend, and I don't know, it just didn't happen. But he was a genius. He has a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Daytime Emmys. He would go drinking with the staff 2 or 3 times a year. And if I was lucky, and if you were lucky at one of these nights, you would wind up in the circle where he was holding court. And if you were smart, you would stop kissing his ass and just listen. And I remember one of those times where one of the producers, my friend Summer, said, Tom, you were hogging Bill for the whole night of drinks. And I'm like, no, man. I was getting a college class from him, I wrote out 3 or 4 pieces of wisdom I got from him. First one being bigger. I feel like I'm failing that today on the show. Bigger. That was the first note he gave to me when I was auditioning to do the warm-up. I probably did a small stand-up act, and his line, the note was bigger. I don't even know if he gave me the note correctly. I think he passed it to somebody else who passed it to me. I asked, how did I do? And the word was, he wants it to be bigger. And I think the next day I came out with what became my semi-facetious catchphrase, who wants to be on TV today? Like if you see me do warm-up, there'll be a microphone in my hand. I'll go, who wants to be on TV today? And that in part was me being facetious, trying to be bigger. Because I'm like, how the hell can I be bigger? And the worst part is it worked. It worked. Another powerful piece of advice from Bill Geddie. I remember the moment. It was the day Whoopi Goldberg was starting at The View. I was sitting with a friend, Rob Bruce Barron, who was the stage manager at The View. And it was the day Whoopi Goldberg was starting at the show. And he said, Tom, you need to learn how to manage people above you. And we were in a room, Whoopi was starting, and there was like 90 network executives. And if you think about that in life, managing your bosses, man, you know, who's telling you what to do, and how do you trick them into telling you or manage them into letting you do the best job that you can do? You know, and when you do the best job, it's best for everybody at the company, isn't it? You have to learn how to manage the people above you. When I had trouble picking between two job offers, he had a line at one of the drink nights that stuck with me was, if I found two equal job offers and couldn't choose between the two, follow the money. At least then you'll know why you did it. You know, so make sparks. I think I touched that one. You know, like even with this podcast, right now, the podcasts that are rating well are my sparky ones. The podcast I did talking about the Long Island serial killer, I'm getting hate mail on my TikToks on them, getting lots of ratings on them. I'm making sparks. You know, me whining about not finding a job, no sparks. No sparks. You know, there was a poem hanging in one of the dressing room hallways at The View. He never showed it to me, but I was told it was a tradition that he would show it to View guest co-hosts and people who were trying to audition for the show or whatnot. Carolina Bermudez shared this story with me, and it's funny, the poem was hanging for years until I read it. And I took a photo of the poem, and it said, let your remarks be of your own invention. Don't say, it's a hot day to the ice cream man. Don't say, I like pie. Everybody likes pie. Don't say, it's a cold world. Everybody says that, and it isn't true anyway. Say something new. Say something worthwhile, and the world will pay real money to hear it. Author unknown. I wasn't the best of friends with Bill Geddie for as much as I owe him. What I always loved about Bill was he let me stay at the show after all my friends, you know, after all the people who brought me in left. He kept me. I thanked him for that. I mean, and again, one great thing that you can learn from Tom Kelly is there is nobody on earth that I love that I have not told that I love. And Bill was one of them. And, you know, and I think I told him, Bill, you know, he gave me the word, you know, and again, he was great at managing talent. And I'm proud to be a blip on that great list of his. You know, I said, Bill, you kept me after Rosie left. And he's like, well, I recognize great talent. He was somebody I wanted to make proud. You know, and it's stupid. He was someone I wanted to work for one more time. You know, I guess, you know, like not to make, you know, someone else's passing about yourself, but let's face it, it's what we all do. I miss that time of my life, not just the TV show, not just the celebrities, but that moment of hope, that moment of my career was going somewhere. And again, Janette Barber, Rosie O'Donnell, Bill Geddie, Barbara Walters, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sherry Shepherd, and we can go down the list, were my career fairy godparents at the time. And I'm looking for the next one who will bring me to the next place where I feel creatively useful. It was fun having him on Facebook. It was fun having him on text message because I could hit him up for advice and he'd reply. And again, this is a man who made millions, and he would share his time and wisdom with goofballs like me. Yeah, and he made us all a little bit better at what we do. Bigger. Share you a silly side note. I have been looking for a picture I took with him. I actually, for 8 years of working together, I don't have a picture with Bill Geddie. I have pictures in a group. I have one in a group that is kind of adorable. I'll probably make that the cover art. I had one picture, a selfie we took because we went to a bar and our friend Rodney Pierre was supposed to come out. And Rodney didn't. Rodney didn't show. The only time Rodney probably never went to a place where someone else would pick up the tab. And I guess I must have deleted the picture because I'm sure I looked awful or fat or I was insecure. And then I realized I can't find the picture. You know, I don't know. And that's just... That's just it, man. You know what? It's 17 minutes into a show. Again, I'm doing this because I think Bill wouldn't necessarily want me to do a podcast about him, but I think Bill, the producer, would want Tom, the talent, to do a show about something people were talking about. And I hope, to his daughters, Lauren, Allison, and his wife, Barbara, a lot of the social time was spent where how much he loved his family would come up. You know, and I guess that's all the color you guys need. That's my behind the scenes on a great person. And a person who had an impact. And yeah, man, I hope one day I can have that kind of impact on you guys, you know? All right. I'm done talking. Happier shows coming up next week. New podcasts every Monday and Wednesday. And that's it. You know what, friends? Just take a little time and enjoy the view. Good night, New York.